Guys, thanks so much for joining us this week.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly pet roundup. I'm Isabel. That's Jessica. We're live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And today we're talking about a very freaky topic.
It is.
It's just freaky. It's just like very sci-fi to me. But I am open to discussion. So if anybody has really strong opinions on the topic, by all means, please comment, share your opinions, share your concerns. But today we're talking about lab-grown meats.
Yes, please do share what you think about it because it is controversial. And that is okay for anyone to have strong opinions one way or the other.
Or none, or be completely uninformed, right? Because I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of us are uninformed because we're all trying to pretend that that's not a thing.
Yeah, I actually, what did I see? Let me find it. Okay, I did want to, start out with this one quote from this NBC News article. It says, company officials are quick to note the products are meat, not substitutes, like the Impossible Burger or
Right.
offerings from Beyond Meat, which are made from plant proteins and other ingredients. So that's a whole other topic, and a topic that I do
We've
feel
already
like
touched on
yeah.
the faux meats. We've touched on those.
Yeah, because it's like it's a seed oil bomb. Those faux meats. So these are actual meats. They say. Grown in a lab.
They're grown in a lab from. Well, I mean, we're gonna dig into it. What are they grown from?
Okay, so well, again, this article from NBC News says cultivated meat is grown in steel tanks using cells that come from a living animal, a fertilized egg, or a special bank of stored cells. In one case, and we'll talk about a couple of the companies maybe, it comes out in large sheets that are then formed into shapes like chicken cutlets and sausages, which makes me think of 3D printing, right? Like I've never actually used a 3D printer, but I have seen like videos of people using 3D printers, and that's what it makes me think of, like this.
Well, I've had vegan chicken wings that were actually shaped as chicken wings. So that's what it makes me think of. And the bone was actually like a wooden stick.
Yes, that's what they use on Hot Ones when they get a guest that won't eat chicken wings.
Yes.
And
they're delicious. I mean, I had them in DC. I can't remember what. There's a vegan place in DC that makes the best fried chicken, and it's vegan and it's delicious. And it's all like soy and like bad stuff, but it tastes amazing. And the stick is like a little wooden stick, like think of a pencil without a point. Like that's what the inside is. But the idea of stem cells or clusters of cells just being like grown into like sheets is just one of the most repulsive things that I could possibly ever like get a mental picture of. And actually I pulled up eufic.org, EUFIC, and they have like a little diagram, and it's like a cow, right? The number one is a little cow. It says a sample of stem cells is taken from a live animal. So that poor little animal who is alive, they take stem cells. From where? It does not say. It doesn't say if it's like, because I know like vaccines, for example, are created on stem cells from like the lungs and like from other parts, the kidneys, of like animals. And like, I don't believe that the animals are dead for that, which seems like really awful. So I'd have to ask, like, where is this stem cell coming from? And is the live animal feeling all this?
Yeah,
because then it's not as humane as we're saying that it might be.
Yeah.
And then number two is that it's cultivated in a nutrient-rich environment. It looks like a little hot box on the picture. And then muscle, fat, and connective tissue are grown in the bioreactor.
Bioreactor. Okay.
And then number four is the cells are separated and arranged to build the meat. I mean, if they're trying to sell me on this, I feel like they need to go back to marketing school, because that
definitely
just sounds horrific.
Yeah. They definitely do. I think so. I have asked my trusty friend ChatGPT what are the risks with this, right? What are people out there talking about? Because for me, and it sounds like for you too, it's just like my brain and my body just go, that's not natural. Please, let's not do this. Please,
Well,
let's not.
I'm not an early adopter of most things, to be honest with you. Like I'm like not like the last person to adopt new technology, but like I'm not
Yeah.
like the first one to be like,
Yeah.
yay, like electric cars. Like I want to know more about all of it.
Yeah.
The manufacturing process, when like people just like hone in on one aspect, like, oh, we're gonna save the animals, but these I have a lot more questions
Yeah.
about
Like,
how we actually
let me see a life cycle first, and then
exactly.
we'll, right.
So
Yeah.
I'm never an early adopter, but like this is too sci-fi for me to even be like a late adopter, I think. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
apparently it's only been around since 2013. According to this article, it was invented or the first time a cultivated beef patty was introduced to the world was in August 2013. The meat was developed by a team led by Mark Post of Maastricht University. At the moment of this blog was written, and this was in 2023, there were 60 startups aiming to produce and sell cultivated meat, and not just beef, but also chicken, duck, seafood, foie gras, kangaroo, and more.
Yeah. There's well, just in the US, as of May 2024, this article says just in the US, 43 companies that are creating cultivated meats, but around the world, I imagine it's significantly higher, especially, we're up there in technology, but we're not always the top one in technology.
Well, this is a European-based site. It's
Mhm.
ufic.org,
Got
and
it.
I'm trying to figure out what ufic stands for, but I can't find it.
Mhm.
And they had it's in Brussels. They're in Brussels, and let me go to it was a very complete article. So science-based content to empower and facilitate the adoption of healthier and more sustainable diets and lifestyles among European citizens, with a focus on 4 main goals, which are to build food and health science, facilitate healthy, sustainable diet shifts, support the prevention of diet and lifestyle-related non-communicable diseases, and empower food waste reduction at the consumption level. So this is exactly the kind of organization that would be like, let's talk about lab-grown meats and how awesome they are. But I guess my question is, and I don't know if ChatGPT told you this, like it's not available for purchase at this time, or is
So, yes and no, which is a horrible thing to say. Mostly no. However, there are a couple of restaurants that are adopting lab grown chicken. One in San Francisco, I believe. Yes, one in San Francisco and one in Washington, D.C. That is specifically for lab grown chicken. And I believe, and I should have, I didn't think of it to research it until just this moment, because I believe I remember when I first heard about this, the big concern is that it's meat and it's chicken cells. So and because it's so brand new, there aren't any like laws regulating it. So there's no requirement for a restaurant like these two restaurants to like designate on the menu that they're using lab grown meat versus an animal like that was naturally conceived and lived in the world as, I don't know, like I
yeah,
want to say like naturally,
so
but it's not always naturally.
you're not informed that you're eating something that was
You're not.
created in a lab. You're being potentially maybe these maybe these particular restaurants have like such a really cool, modern, progressive clientele
Yeah.
that wants to like save the earth from all of the, the water that it takes to create regular meat, that they're like all super excited to try it, maybe, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't know anything about these restaurants. But for me in particular, I would like to know
Yeah.
before I eat something if it was, but you know what, there's so much about our food we don't know, like
Yeah.
shrimp, for example, that it gets like injected with like saline to plump them up for shipment.
Mhm.
Soy in chicken, what that you buy at the store. Like I was trying to avoid chicken when my son was born because he had a soy and dairy allergy, and like the allergists were like, yeah, but it's everywhere. Like soy's everywhere. Like it's in the chicken breast that you probably just ate. So because they like inject stuff
Yeah.
into our food that we don't know about. So this is just yet another thing
Yeah.
in our food supply that we will not know about, and we're just going to have to
Yeah.
research the heck out of it. Like there's going to be a point where we can't eat anything without doing like an extensive
I know.
dive into it.
I know. Well, and I think we're probably pretty early talking about this as far as like pets are concerned and what we're feeding our pets, but maybe not, right? Because anything that a company puts a crap ton of money into, that ultimately, if it doesn't get approved for human use, they're going to figure out a way to give it to pets because that liability isn't there, right? So, I mean, we've seen this over and over and over again. Like the pet food industry is set up as a disposal system for human waste products. The pharmaceutical industry does this over and over again with drugs that they create that are whether they get to put them out on the market or not. So if they go through trials and they don't get to put them out on the market, they're going to give them to pets. If they go through trials, they put them out on the market and have to pull them because of problems, they're going to give them to pets. So like they're going to get their money back one way or the other, and that's kind of one of my concerns with all of the money being spent in this sector is that if humans don't adopt it, what are they going to do with all of this? They have so much invested in it, right? And it's funny that you say like, oh, I wonder how modern these restaurants are, and like, do they have this clientele that's just like, you know, I'm going to save the earth by not eating animal products, right? Because that's kind of where my head went first with this conversation is like, okay, what are we being told? What is the marketing around this? What is it that people could be believing to think that this is a good idea? And that's one of the things. One of the
Yes.
primary things is with environmental concerns, with just having to raise so many animals for human consumption, with the
Population
care.
growing as much as we are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, how poorly most animals are cared for in our food system. Like all of that certainly is a concern. In my opinion, the answer is regenerative farming and ranching, but that's not where the money is. Hopefully, RFK Jr. is going to help us out with this. I don't know. We'll see how much he can get done.
I have zero faith in anybody in the government.
Yeah,
But yeah.
it's certainly a crapshoot.
Yeah.
But that is kind of the argument for it,
Yeah.
right? Is that not as many animals are going to suffer.
There's still slaughter.
We're,
There's still slaughter. So it's not
yeah,
vegan. It's not vegetarian. It's still meat. There's still,
right.
and I was just reading right now that it's taken just like just like for vaccines, that's the stem cells are taken from fetal bovine serum. So there is slaughter of the fetus to get that out. And
Yeah.
I don't want to get into like too much of a deep dark hole here, but like they're not usually medicating these fetuses, no matter what species they are, they just take the stem
Yeah.
cells. So like for that individual animal, that is not like if you believe that fetuses have any kind of nerve ending and feel pain, and I'm talking about a cow here, a baby cow, a fetus, not a baby, a fetus cow, a cow fetus, then it's still not slaughter free and it's still not cruelty free, right? Like at all.
Certainly not. I mean, they're
And
not
like
going
you
to
have
tell
to,
you that.
right, but like just from my understanding of how
Yeah.
these are harvested for other uses, like it's not always like
Yeah.
cruelty-free situation. It's actually really like evil when you think about it. Like,
Yeah.
why can't we just like numb the pain a little bit before like
Mhm.
tearing somebody's kidneys out? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know the answer to that. Maybe it affects the quality of the product, but it sucks. And then, so it's not slaughter free. Yes, like from one, and then I'd have to ask, like, from what that one fetus, like, how many times can we use these stem cells? Like,
Mhm.
how much use do we get from that one
Right.
creature, right? Like, I don't know. And it's supposed to be safer, like, than regular meat, like, as far as food safety, but like, it depends on the cleanliness of the lab, the shipping, because it's not all going to be created in one place. Like food safety, I feel like it's equal because it's the same thing. Like we're transporting, it's raw, it's not cooked, it's being manipulated, it's exposed to the elements. Like refrigeration is going to be key. Ba, 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 ba. So like while in some places you'll see that as a pro, I'm not super convinced. I mean, that it's very
Mhm.
different from real meat because meat is meat is meat, right? It is lab
Yeah.
grown meat. So it's going to need a lab control, like a controlled
Mhm.
lab environment. Um, Maybe it's safe in the lab, but then when you ship it, like that doesn't keep it
Yeah.
from, being exposed to E. coli and things like that, just
Yeah.
from the environment.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's to expand on that. I again asked ChatGPT, okay, what are the actual concerns here? Because obviously there's a huge ick factor. There's
Yeah.
a huge, and I think there's also a playing God factor, right? That just doesn't sit right with a lot of people. That it's hard to pinpoint and put into words like why that is such an issue. But here are some of the concerns that were brought up. There is a website called News Medical Life Sciences that brought up the point that there is a potential for cancer promoting properties because of the rapid cell the rapid cell proliferation that's required to produce lab grown meat could raise concerns about the potential for cancer promoting properties in the consumed product. So, just by the nature of how it's grown, they don't want to wait the life cycle of an animal,
Yeah.
right? They want it to go fast. So, the production of cells is increased, which is a concern for when you consume something. If, for example, you were to consume an animal that had cancer, if you were to consume a piece of meat that had a tumor on it, this is why the USDA doesn't allow that in human consumption. That is regulatory. They'll put it in pet food. They will not put it in a grocery store for you to buy and eat. There's concern over what that's going to do in your body. And I think we see in our pets what that does in their
Yeah.
body.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right? Um, so that's, to me, that's a pretty big concern in and of itself. There are contaminant issues that you brought up, and the World Health Organization, as much as I'm not a fan, they also brought it up. They identified potential hazards in lab grown meat, including contamination with heavy metals. It is grown in huge steel vats, remember? Microplastics, allergens, chemical contaminants, toxic components, antibiotics, and something called prions, which is a scientific word that I just didn't look up. And I think, again, when I think of like contamination, when I think of something grown in a lab, it's sterile. Like their goal is sterile, right? And then you take that something sterile and you introduce it into the world, it can't handle a normal load of whatever is in the environment. It can't do it because it doesn't have any immune system or defense mechanisms. So I think there is a pretty big concern with how much more contaminated these meats could be, just because it didn't come from an animal that went through a birth and
Yeah,
development and whatever
exactly.
life cycle they got. So I think there's a huge risk there. I mean, you have to introduce it into a natural environment, into the world, to get it into the hands of somebody to be able to eat it. What's going to happen to that meat at that point? It can't. I mean, I don't know. That maybe I'm thinking too deep into that, but it's
No, I agree. Well, we don't know what we don't know.
right.
That's always what it comes down to with these new things, is we don't know what we don't know. And just because we can do so much due diligence in one thing, one aspect of this new technology, doesn't mean that we're not going to forget like a key component of the
Yeah.
argument, or for or against, right? Like we don't know what we don't know. And that's why drugs get it, approved and then pulled, because we didn't know this random thing that came out after the trials, because we didn't test for that. We didn't know we had to. So it's not like, I'm not thinking that every like scientist is a mad scientist trying to like be disgusting. I don't know. There's a movie that this reminds me of, and this is a movie that very few people will have ever heard of. But if you like thrillers, this movie is amazing. It's by Almodovar, Pedro Almodovar, who is a Spanish from Spain director who makes some really cool movies, just like really not gory, but thrillers, always keeping you guessing. And one of them is called La piel que habito, which translated is the skin I live in. And it is a mad scientist, a doctor, who is doing some really interesting work with burn victims using like skin of pigs, and it evolves to like the most ridiculously entertaining and such freaky storylines that you are like, I watched it on a plane and the whole time I was like because I was like freaking out. You don't see it coming. It's amazing. But that's kind of what's in my head. It's like we start somewhere where it's like we're going to do something good for the earth, and then it evolves. And then like, are we going to know? Is it going to be something that we get to choose? Is it something that's going to be marked as cultivated or cultured meat? Or are we going to just start giving it names that like we won't know what's in there? It's always like it starts with like, oh, I'm going to do something good, and then it evolves to somewhere like creepy or like scary. And apparently the use of lab grown meat is approved in the United States. Like the FDA has approved, and Singapore apparently has approved. I don't know about the EU or UK, but it is approved. They issued, like the FDA issued a grant of inspection to specific companies. The one that you're talking about, it's called Good Meat, a California company that will serve their cultivated chicken at a restaurant in Washington, D.C., and Upside Foods, a California company that partnered with a restaurant in San Francisco. So like it's already in our food system.
Yeah.
When it does appear on the supermarket shelves, it will say USDA inspection stamp and seal with the prefix cell cultured on the label, so that's what we're going to be looking for, cell cultured. Like you said, right now it's mostly chicken from what I can understand, but there is work being done on pork, lamb, fish, and beef. And I don't know, like it gives me that kind of like, just playing God is definitely a concern.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yep.
just gives me that mad scientist kind of like, I want to be the one who like develops this amazing meat that I want to like look past like the potential hazards, because I'm just like trying to like develop this amazing thing. Kind of like the breeder who made the first golden doodle or labradoodle, who like now like wishes he never did that. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Like the scientists were all like, this is going to be amazing. And then down the line, they're like, I can't believe we didn't see this coming. And like, there's like some kind of pandemic that comes as a result of this meat.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, I know. So many thoughts there. But one of my questions was on nutrients because I think one of the probably one of the primary reasons a lot of this is taking so much time and money is a palatability issue. To be able to get people to eat it, it's got to taste good. It has to have the right texture. And when an animal lives in the wild, certainly that's going to be the best, the healthiest and tastiest, right? And then you get into most of our food supply, which is, industrial, lot raised animals, monocropping, all of that. Significantly less nutrition and potentially even tasting a whole heck of a lot worse. If you think of beef, for example, and it's grated, like it can be really tough, it can be really tender, it can have a really great flavor, it could taste really horribly.
Right.
And eating a grass-fed steak versus a corn or grain-fed steak, drastically different. Part of that is, movement in the animal's body, right? How their cells are being fed, so what they're eating, the sunlight they're exposed to, literally any and everything they are exposed to can change
the way they taste,
the way they taste, the quality.
Yeah.
And so
like those pigs in Europe that only eat acorns or whatever, and they taste better than all the other pigs. Yeah, like that's,
yes, exactly.
It's very seriously connected, what they eat and how they taste.
Yeah. So how are those cells being, quote, fed? What's the energy of those cells? And I don't think we know. I think that's part of the technology, right? Is like,
but it just says the stem cells are cultivated in a nutrient-rich environment. So like,
right,
a bunch of synthetic things, a bunch of synthetics.
That's what I'm saying. So like, what is the nutrition? And how does that translate into our body? Like, we don't know any of this. We know none of this. And I would go out on a limb to say that probably is part of the technology, how they're feeding these cells.
Of course,
what they're feeding these cells,
because that's going to be proprietary. So they're not going to say, and then we're not going to know, and we're not going to know what fillers are being used either, because that's proprietary. Because this is a technology. This is not
right. And so if we look at the history of food science, this is where everything goes wrong. This is where we are creating all of this disease. This is where we're creating ADHD in kids with food dyes. This is where we're creating all of our problems, almost all of our problems. We are creating so much of it in food science, in creating and in making sure that foods taste so good that we can't stop eating them, that foods are
addictive, are literally full of addictive chemicals that make us want to eat the whole bag instead of a handful. Yeah.
And so this is a perfect way to put more of that in our bodies, in my opinion.
Well, we won't know what's in it, because again, like, it's going to be like the secret recipe for each one of these companies that will not say what they use. They will probably only have to tell us if there's an allergen in it, like, produced in an environment with tree nuts or something might be on there, but that's it. That's all we'll know. Like, they will probably protect their recipe and their technology to the death. And even if that means that we're eating like literal poop as an ingredient, like, we won't know, because maybe that's the way that they, maybe that's the nutrient rich environment, just like, manure. Who knows? Like, we don't know. So it's just, to me, it's super, I get it. I get the motivation. I don't think it's our only option. I know that, the world population is going to be at 9 billion by 2050, give or take. And I know that that's a huge strain on the environment and on our resources. And this will reduce emissions. This can reduce the resources used, but at what cost, right? Like at what cost?
Yeah. Well, and icing on the cake is that UC Davis has been studying, and as far as I can tell, it is currently under peer review. I have no idea how long that takes. Apparently a while. But their
It's
research, yeah, their research has found that lab grown or cultivated meats, the environmental impact is likely to be orders of magnitude higher than retail beef based on current and near-term production methods. So all of the marketing about how much better it is for the environment, apparently it
I
is
mean,
way worse.
where are you putting all those steel vats? Like
Yeah.
what do you know what I mean? Like, how are you doing? Like, think about AI. How many resources just AI with all these servers take up? Like, this is not going to be a light operation to create
Yeah.
all this and to meet the demands of 90 billion people, right? Like,
Yeah, it says, I'm quoting from UC Davis, it says, researchers conducted a life cycle assessment of the energy needed and greenhouse gases emitted in all stages of production and compared that with beef. One of the current challenges with lab grown meat is the use of highly refined or purified growth media, the ingredients needed to help animal cells multiply. Currently, this method is similar to the biotechnology used to make pharmaceuticals, which is scary in itself. This sets up a critical question for cultured meat production. Is it a pharmaceutical product or a food product? So, who is this? Doctoral graduate Derek Risner. He is quoted as saying, if companies are having to purify growth media to pharmaceutical levels, it uses more resources, which then increases global warming potential. Whatever you think of global warming, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just saying that this is what UC Davis has found.
CO2 emissions, not even global warming, just CO2.
Yeah.
Does it emit? Does it not? It emits a lot then.
And he goes on, it goes on quoting him saying, if this product continues to be produced using the pharma approach, it's going to be worse for the environment and more expensive than conventional beef production. That was a mouthful, but I think that's a huge branch of this topic to go down. Is it food or is it pharma?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, currently in our country, they're both controlled by the same
Yeah,
thing.
exactly. It's the same one and the same pretty much
branch, but I think that's an important question for all of us to ask ourselves, because especially today, like we've lived through the last 5 years where so many people, regardless, again, not at all political, but so many people have woken up to the fact that you have to take control of your own health. You're responsible for it. You need to do more research and understand what you're putting in and on your body. Like, I think it's just a reality that more people have woken up to that.
Yes, more people are comfortable questioning than they were before, for sure.
Yeah. And so you are going to have to struggle with that question. Is this a food or is this a pharmaceutical? And currently, according to UC Davis, it's a pharmaceutical.
I mean, it's grown in a lab from a stem cell, just like you would do a vaccine.
Yeah. So, and I didn't click on this before. I'm going to click on this link to highly refined or purified growth media, because that's what I guess they are.
That is the nutrient.
Using.
Yeah, that's what that is. But it's not going to tell you what's in it. They're gonna change it. They're gonna put flavorings and things in there.
Exactly.
They're gonna do all sorts of stuff to make it palatable.
They have to make it right. They have to make the texture right, which they're not going to get because these are not animals that are moving around.
Yeah.
Right.
So like I said at the beginning, the muscle, fat, and connective tissue grow in the bioreactor at what speeds? Like at what rates, right? Like which one grows
Mhm.
faster, so the more muscle, the more tough it is, right? Like all that stuff. How fatty? Do we want to control how much fat? Because people don't want fat. Maybe they want less fat, but the fat's also a flavor and um, an aspect of flavors. So like there's so much that they can control in those two phases, in that environment, the nutrient rich environment, and then the bioreactor. They're just going to be
Yeah,
adding stuff to the process.
absolutely. Okay, so this is interesting to me. So I clicked on that link from UC Davis, and it takes me to a study published in Bio RXIV. I don't know. There's the preprint server for biology through Cold Springs Harbor Laboratory, just in case anybody is interested in all of this stuff. It says, so I guess two growth mediums. One of them is called Essential 8. Another one is called Beefy 9. So again, these are technology companies that are creating artificial nutrients for these cells. That's what they're studying. And it says the study found that the addition of antibiotics to the growth media increased the environmental metrics, such as the cumulative energy demand and global warming potential, by 2 orders of magnitude, which to me says that it's a normal practice that antibiotics are being added to this. That's another level.
But depends on where you look, because it literally says, like, I'm on longevity.technology.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's .com, and it says one of the benefits is reduced antibiotics. Traditional farming often uses antibiotics, which can have health implications. Lab-grown meat can reduce the need for antibiotics in meat production. So it depends on who you ask. And these are also hypotheticals. Like, this is just the idea that they're being sold. Like, in practice, are there going to be antibiotics? We don't know.
I don't know. I do not know.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's so interesting. So let's see. Somebody commented something.
I can't see any comments, so I'm so sorry. And I will say,
I'm sorry.
One thing that we didn't touch on is food security. And food security is obviously something super important. But if we're having such a huge impact on the environment, can we do something better? Can we create food security in a more efficient way than this?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think so. I think I think we get political when we go down the food security rabbit hole.
Yes,
Right?
exactly.
So that's kind of hard to have that conversation. Joy Rescue Legacy doesn't eat meat herself, and made a couple of comments around that.
Would she
Diane,
eat lab-grown meat?
It doesn't seem like it. She seems grossed out by this topic.
Yes.
According to her, I'm going back. There's like,
same,
I'm just scrolling.
Girl, same.
I appreciate that. And I said last week, and you too, for much of your life, I was vegetarian. Short period of time I was vegan, and for my health, I can't go back. But I learned how I was wrong about why I was vegetarian in the first place, because I fell for the whole, it's better for the environment. You're not harming animals this way, blah, blah, blah. We talked about all of that last week. And I truly, truly, truly believe that this is just another one of those going to send you down the same rabbit hole with, promises of being better, being a good person and a good steward of the earth. Meanwhile, you are harming your body. I truly believe that.
Abusing the environment nonetheless.
Yeah.
Like if it's all the same, if it all comes out in the wash the same, then I mean, what's the benefit? Like, is it
right?
I mean, and talking about food security, like, none of these imitation meats are cheap. So there's nothing to tell us that this is going to be affordable.
No. In fact, anything new is crazy expensive. And so if it is, which it has been, the FDA has approved some of these for, going out to consumers. There is definitely as I said earlier, there is a concern, one, that it will fail in the human market, which I think largely the fake meats have. I don't know if you remember, a decade ago, they had a pretty decent amount of real estate
When
in
I
a grocery
first
store.
moved here, I was still vegetarian, and I was
Mm.
when I first moved here, we would go every Wednesday to Whole Foods to have Beyond Burgers.
Mm.
Yeah, it was
Well,
definitely, and they had a special on
yeah.
Beyond Burgers or just burgers, and they,
Mhm.
2 for 1 or something like that. And we would go every
Yeah.
Wednesday. I actually really enjoy the flavor of the Starbucks Impossible breakfast sandwich. To me, it's so tasty, but it has twice as many calories as everything else on
Yeah.
their breakfast menu. So I never order it. If I order that, it's like a splurge on my part. And it's not, I eat meat. It's not because it is healthier. It is not because it's cheaper. It is not because it's just because I enjoy the engineered flavor that they've come up with for this
Mhm.
Impossible breakfast sandwich. It is definitely way worse for you than their, other breakfast sandwich with sausage or with bacon, regular old sausage and bacon, 200 calories more on the same size sandwich. But yeah, for a long time, I think they were really great. And we used to, Beyond really did a good job. They had the sausages, they had the meat patties, they had the ground beef so that you can make pasta with it. They had a ton of stuff. And honestly, I'm just I want ground turkey, because ground turkey, I don't really love beef all the time. I personally, I have an easier time eating poultry than mammals, personally, it's just ethically, I don't know, I'm just not as connected maybe to chickens. It's a total cognitive dissonance because it's still a
Mhm.
sentient creature and it's still,
Yeah. Yeah.
slaughter. But for me, it's ground turkey takes the place of all beef for me, and chili and pasta sauce, whatever. And I'm just as happy with it. So I have no problem with the fake meats, if that fits, your lifestyle, and the real meats, if that's for you. But I just think that it's so important for people to think about what they're eating and not fall into just because it's not meat, it's healthier. It is not.
Yeah.
Just because it's turkey doesn't mean it's less flavorful. We have all these preconceived notions of things that we need to start doing our own critical thinking and saying, yes, would a fake fish be great? Because then we're not overfishing the oceans. Would that be amazing? Yes, that would be. Or how about we just regulate fishing more? Or how about we just take care of our oceans more in other ways? Maybe this is it's kind of like those band-aids we keep creating for the
Yep.
mistakes that we're making, instead of changing our lifestyles and instead of changing our practices, instead of putting pressure on our governments to do the right thing and to stop being paid off by everybody who's involved in any kind of manufacturing of food. We're just being well, let's create fake,
Mhm.
scallops so that we can still enjoy this delicacy. Maybe no. Maybe
I know.
we need to forego fish for a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah. Maybe, yes, maybe we need to go back to eating what is available locally in season, which would be so hard because we have these cluster. I get it.
Yeah.
It's
The
a
food
problem one way or the
deserts,
other.
food swamps, and usually
Mhm.
they affect the lower socioeconomic levels, and they're the ones that stand to probably be taken advantage of the most with these new technologies, because they won't
Yeah.
know what's in there, but they're going to eat it and hope for the best, just
Yeah.
they, we always talk about this in my family, where we'll go to a drive-through and we'll be like, oh my God, you can get a double cheeseburger for $1. Why would anybody go home and make a sandwich?
I
You know
know,
what I
right?
mean?
It's crazy.
When you think about how cheap it is to just go through the drive-through and get yourself a cheeseburger, why go
That
home and get like a good quality bread and like turkey or, you know, like a nice slice of cheese. Like, why? Like the time, the effort, the money. I mean, a sandwich today with good ingredients at home is like $4.
Yeah,
So you
at
get
least.
why
Yeah.
these people who are working two jobs can't, you know, make
Mhm.
ends meet, who are obviously suffering with their weight and their health in general, are opting for a drive-through because everything's so inaccessible.
Mhm.
Inaccessible.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
they're promised these solutions that really aren't solutions at all.
I know. So, yeah, I think it's basically gonna come down to, will it pan out in the human market or will it flop?
I mean, we've been doing this for how long? It was invented in 2016, did I say? And here
13,
we
I think.
are, 13, so it's over 10 years and we're still kind of sort of getting approvals. I mean, sure, in the future, I bet that there's going to be more of this, but there has to be a more sustainable way to make it a reality. Like that's
I
really
Yeah,
scalable too.
I think if people don't know what they're eating, it could potentially work for a while, but again, the life cycle, like how long will it sustain life? What kind of, just like we're seeing with everything else, at what point do we say this is causing more harm than good? Because
No,
I would imagine it will.
we'll just be issued a pharmaceutical upon birth for the rest of our lives, like the
Well,
Ozempics
we
and
already
Wegovys
are.
and stuff, right? Like we're just
Yeah.
gonna be given like shots at birth that are gonna help us metabolize these things that our bodies are not evolving quickly enough to digest and
I
you know, like
feel I
and
truly
process.
feel like this is literal insanity. Like we are, when I completely agree with you, and to like put my mind there, I'm just like, all I can think of is that, like, we are the cattle, right?
Yeah.
Being prodded through whatever line that, whoever, I don't even know, like the elites of the world. I don't even know this, and I know it sounds like such a
I don't know
conspiracy,
that
but
it's
it is
elites. It's
not.
just like, again, it's just like one of these things that's like, ooh, this would be cool. Let's get a grant to
I don't
study
know.
this. And then it like takes it's a life of its own. Like I always think that things
It's
start
gotta
with
be.
like there's always something like the road to hell is paved with good intentions, you know, and like
Yeah,
that's like one of
yeah,
the best sayings ever because I do think it starts with the best of intentions. Like, let's study this so that we can solve world hunger, that we can do all these
yeah,
things. And then it like takes on a life of its own that is not in line with its original purpose or vision. And that's just, I
yeah,
feel like that's what just happens so regularly. We're kind of like jaded to just expect that now. And for me, like my biggest issue would be like, hey, you want to do this, like do it, but just make sure that I know that that's what I'm eating and
yeah.
that I'm given the option. Because like already, speaking of fast food, like you've seen like how they make those chicken nuggets with that like clay
Oh,
looking, like
yeah, the
Play-Doh looking,
pink
like pink
slime.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
And like, unless you are watching a video, like your algorithm knows you're interested in food science, you're not seeing that. And
mm-mm.
you don't know that. And like my daughter loves herself a chicken nugget. Like, you know, everywhere we go. And honestly, the grosser, the better. Like if it looks like chicken that I would eat, she's like, ew, it's too
Yeah.
crunchy or it's too hard or whatever. She wants that pink mush. And
Mhm.
that is what I feed her whenever we're, you know, like at like a kid's place, you know, you go to Chili's, there's like a kids menu. That's what you're feeding them, probably. Not to say Chili's in particular, because I haven't done the research, but like most of these chicken nuggets that you're getting, unless you're making them at home or buying organic, you know, there's a really great brand at Costco that is like an organic chicken nugget and it's full like breast meat and it's
It's like
good.
bear or something.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are quality. Like you can find chicken nuggets to make at home that are like pre-prepared that are good.
There's still seed oils in them, but yes.
Yes, exactly. There's still fillers, but like it's like a better option than like the
Yeah.
pink gunk.
Mhm.
But like nobody tells you that. There's no marker, there's no like nothing on the Happy Meal that says like this is made with pink mush.
Right.
There
No.
is, like, I remember when I was pregnant with Noah, all I could eat was cheese and crackers, and the only crackers I could stomach were wheat thins. And I remember sitting there so miserable in my first trimester. Everything made me vomit. The smell of pasta made me vomit. The smell of rice made me vomit, like cooked rice. So we couldn't cook anything at my house. We could not cook anything.
Wow.
I remember sitting there looking at the box being like, I can't believe I'm eating this while pregnant. And it says made with genetically modified ingredients as I'm like just stuffing my face with them. And at least I was given the information on the box that said like this was made with genetically modified ingredients, and I could choose whether or not to keep stuffing myself with them. And I did choose to do that. I mean, it was better than the Skittles I had had the day before because that's all I could stomach that day. So like no judgment if that's what people eat, but at least we're being told
Right.
like so many things we eat, we have no idea what they are, especially for our pets, like bringing it back to the pets. So many things we feed them as consumers, we are not told. We are not told that the cow in this beef formula had like was riddled with cancer before that she was slaughtered, right? Like nobody tells us that, but that's legal and okay. And that's when like my blood starts boiling because it's like we're paying money and we're not being told.
Yeah.
And it's like we pick and choose what we tell people. Like, yeah, with a pharmaceutical, you'll pick up your pills, you'll pick up your shots, and you'll have like, you know, a page or two of side effects. And that's, you know, the ones that were found during the study, like not necessarily all the side effects, just the ones that were confirmed with whatever study they presented to the FDA. But at least there's a warning, right? With our food, so many times there isn't. Like nobody's telling us about these red dyes and these dyes that are causing like hyperactivity and like affecting learning in schools for these children who are constantly being bombarded with candies containing these dyes. There's nobody telling us that there are literal chemicals that make us addicted to these products. Nobody tells us that. Like a bottle of wine will say, you know, like do not drive, you know, do not consume when you're pregnant, but the dye doesn't say anything. Those chemicals that alter your brain chemistry don't say anything. So like wherever this lands, there's no guarantee that we'll be warned, told, respected, given consent, none of that.
Well, and like I said, it's if it is successful in the human market, it will likely make its way eventually into the pet market. Some way, shape, or form. If it's not successful in the human market, I worry they're going to try to recoup whatever they can by putting it in the pet market. And right now, yes, it's going to be so expensive that there's no way it's going in the pet market just because of the cost. But they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out to recoup any cost they can. They'll figure it out.
I mean, they're not going to let it go to waste. They're not going to let these vats go to waste. One thing I do think is underrated is insects. I do think that insects are a really great idea for something that we can consider for food scarcity, right? Because if we do have like changes in our environment that cause food scarcity, insects, I mean, cockroaches could survive the A-bomb, right? Like, so we might need to be looking at that. Like Mexicans eat all sorts of insects. I was just at a friend's house for Super Bowl and we had worms, we had crickets. What else did we have? We had another type of worm or grub or something. We had 3 different things. And honestly, like they're flavored, so it's not like you're really tasting, and the texture is just like a crunchy something. And they choose obviously the insects that are most palatable. But these are not expensive. They, you know, are like snacks that people like. My friend who her husband loves them. She's like, I don't eat that. But all the kids were coming around being like, "Ooh, I'll try some." Like my kid loved the crickets, and some of them liked the worms, but I didn't like the worm. But you know, there are other options rather than growing stuff in a lab and then calling it food. Like I'm gonna go with insects before I try this.
Yeah, I think. I think you still have the same issue with the morals around, raising them. Like, a lot of people probably don't have the same problem that you do with poultry
Yeah.
or mammals,
Most
right?
people don't care.
But to me, they're all living beings.
Right.
So how they're raised again, and then they're so small that they probably will be raised indoors, which is again a very unnatural way. So for them to live. So are we going to be decreasing the quality of their nutrients, their nutrition? There's also a digestibility issue. I know people around the world eat them. I get it.
Mhm.
And there are
Yeah, yeah,
different
yeah. Asia's very
types of
big on insects.
mhm,
Yeah.
different types of insects that are eaten. The ones like crickets with exoskeletons, I think there are digestibility issues with it. Um, so, I think one of the things, there was one company that I did talk to at a trade show, and their answer was like they grind it up so finely that it's fine, but I don't
It's
know.
a probiotic, right?
You're yeah, I know whole, you're not gonna digest them. I mean, the exoskeleton, it takes forever and ever and ever and ever.
So
So I think
I
they're
have those crickets in my belly right now. Just
probably. Probably. Because that exoskeleton is just, I mean, oh, someone, I don't know them, but they were in another one of the, like, pet health coaches that was in the program I went through, did her own study, like, in her garage with, I don't know, like, hydrochloric acid or something, and she was testing, a cooked food versus a kibble versus a raw food versus insect protein, and, I mean, just what you would think. The gently cooked, then the raw, then the kibble took forever, and the cricket protein, like, days later still hadn't broken down.
yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, I do think there are digestibility issues with some of it, maybe not with all of it. I know
Yeah.
there's, like, black fly larva that's very, very popular in pet food as well. So that might not have the same, they don't have the exoskeleton that a cricket does. So, yeah, I mean, it's
When you get
certainly
into larva, I start getting real grossed out.
yeah. Well, when you're putting it in something like a kibble, right, you're just trying to increase the protein
Yeah.
percentage. You're
Yeah.
not I mean, you're not getting that texture, you're not getting that flavor.
I
Um,
ate a fly once by mistake
yeah.
and it tasted awful. So there's a
Did it?
palatability issue there. Yeah, that's how I knew. I grew up in Ecuador and I did my 6th grade year. I left Miami, went back for a year, came back because of my parents' job. And while we were there, Ecuador is like I mean, dengue fever, every insect you can think of, like trash wasn't being picked up. Ecuador had some serious infrastructure issues when I was there. And we didn't have like AC because we had like power shutoffs and all sorts of stuff. So there
Mhm.
was always like bugs inside the house just because you had no choice but to open the windows. And we lived a nice life. So I'm not saying that like we were exposed to things. We were actually quite privileged, but that's just the life down there. And
Yeah.
my grandmother was making homemade French fries. And I was just eating the homemade French fries with whatever meat she had created. And I took a bite of something and I immediately was like, that is not a French fry. And I spit it out and it was like a fly that was like half eaten, like on my plate. And it was the most, I was 11 years old and I still have a very vivid memory of that flavor. So I can't imagine that all insects are going to be
Yeah, no.
usable,
Yeah.
but I'm willing to try the ones that are mild and can be spiced up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against it as much as lab-grown meat. At least it
Agreed.
is natural. I mean, it may not be a huge part of a natural diet for a dog or a cat, but insects would definitely be part of a diet.
Yeah, and I mean, my dog Kira will snap a fly out of the air and eat it, and she's got no problem with it. And Van Gogh, the cat, always is hunting some kind of little fruit fly or something. So they're
Yeah.
not strangers to it, but it's definitely not like what that's not their sole source of nutrition for a reason, because it's just never going to be enough. They'd have to hunt all day to fill like the back of their mouth, like with like five. Yeah, it's not enough.
Yeah. No, I'm a very big fan of beef for humans. it's a superfood, I think, for humans, but
the quality one, not the Big Mac, guys, not the Big Mac. That's
not the Big Mac. That's no. I mean, I think I do believe that people would be better off eating even a lot raised cow than no beef at all. As much as I hate the idea of
like
an animal, living that way, just as far as quality of nutrition that we're getting, because we are so, I mean, and our pets too. If you're watching this, there's a good chance that your pets are getting some pretty good quality nutrition. But in general, the pets in this country and almost all of the humans in this country, we are the most overfed animals on this planet, getting the least amount of nutrients. Yes, it's terrible. And so I'm going to keep drinking my raw milk and eating my beef.
I'm hungry now after all this conversation. I'm hungry. I'm going to go make some lentils.
Lentils.
That's what's for dinner. Lentils. I love to make lentils, but there is pork in these. So
yeah. So will Noah eat the lentils because he likes carbs?
My kids like the lentils a lot. They're very like meaty. I soak them. I put, I make like a sofrito. I put cumin in them. They're really tasty. This one has bacon. I don't always put but I had, like bacon or pancetta. So I'm using that. But my kids love them, and they're kind of like, it's kind of like that wholesome food that kind of like, they don't like chili anymore, because I find chili to be really nourishing too. Like I really enjoy that. I love like a minestrone, which is vegetarian. We put shaved Parmesan on it. They love soups, but I feel like, they're picky. They're picky about, I don't like spicy. It's too this. It has peppers. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like 5 and 7 years old. It's hard, but that's what's for dinner. I chop the peppers really small so they don't see them.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, there's whole books out there on how to hide vegetables in food for kids.
Yes, exactly. I have them. I have 2 of them. I have 2 different ones, like the Sneaky Chef from the 80s. I have it.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. I hope you had a wonderful time. If you have any comments after we log off about your thoughts on this meat, this lab-grown meat, or anything you learned today that you had not put any thought into about this topic, please comment, and we'll respond.
Are we doing this on Monday? Are you still around on Monday?
I am here on Monday, the 20. No.
Yeah, 20.
The 24th.
Yeah.
I am here, so we were going to talk about something else. I forgot what it is.
Are we going to do the consumer reports?
Consumer reports. Yes, let's do that.
I emailed them, but I haven't heard back. Yeah. Yeah, I have a problem with them.
So yeah, we will see you next week.
Shocker.
3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 4 p.m. Central. And then there's going to be a couple weeks, like pretty much all of March is going to be not happening, at least on my end. I will be on a cruise with the Texas Pet Sitters for their 10th annual conference. And then I will be in Spain for 3 Mondays. And then when we come back starting April 1st, it'll be on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Instead of Mondays, Mondays are getting a little tough for me just because Mondays are holidays, Mondays are things with the family. So Tuesdays seem to be like more manageable. So we will see you next week. And then I will see you again April 1st. And then Jessica will let you know what she's going to do during March.
Yeah, I think I have Kara for at least one, and then Lauren with Girls Gone Raw for at least one, and then we'll see. We'll just see how things go.
All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great week. And tune in Thursday. I do have a live podcast again this week. And it should be fun. So if you didn't catch last week's,
Who is it with
do.
this week?
Oh God, I have to tell you.
Okay.
Well,
while you're looking at,
yeah,
I was gonna say.
Go ahead. Go.
So tomorrow, my episode on the Pet Parenting Reset is with Jonathan Wainberg, who is the one of the VPs at Care Credit. And we talk about the lifetime of cost for a pet and preparing for emergency costs with a pet, which I know you and I have talked about quite a bit. And I think it was just a good extension of the conversation that we've had.
So my guest is Jen Friedline, and she is a dog trainer with a lot of acronyms behind her name. So CBCCKA, CPDTKA, FDM. So she is
credentialed.
She's credentialed. And we're going to talk about online training, behavior modification with an online trainer, and whether it's for you or not. And we'll talk about, her background, how she got into all this and stuff. So if you are curious to learn more about online training, that one will be all for you.
I love it. All right, guys, have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.